Today's vocab lesson is coming from Lesson 3 of your Classical Roots workbook. We're on page 17, and today's lesson is all about position. Now, just as a reminder, the quiz that's coming up for Lesson 3 is going to be cumulative over all the words and roots from Lessons 1, 2, and 3. So hopefully you still have your note cards and your vocab connection charts, and now you will have your vocab visual cards, all of which you can use to study from for your next quiz. Make sure you also have your root card out so that you can add the definitions of the roots from this lesson to that card. The first root that we're learning is X. X means from or out of. Make sure you add X to your vocab root card. It should be the next one on the list. This is lesson 3. And again, X means from or out of. The first word that uses the root X is excerpt. Excerpt is a noun or a verb. It can be used in both ways, and it is a passage selected from a book, play, piece of music, etc. It can also be the action of taking a passage from a book, usually a quote. So used in a sentence, this word can sound like this. Please see the excerpt from Harry Potter. In your workbook, there are a few other examples. One is, our anthology contains thousands of excerpts from literature and around the world. You could also, if you're going to use it as a verb, say, the students excerpted their favorite numbers from Cats to perform at the variety show. So there are ways you can use this as a noun and a verb. Now, instead of doing our vocab connections or our note cards this week, we are going to be doing vocab visuals. So everyone should have 10 pink vocab visual cards. On the front of your card, you're going to write the word excerpt, and then you're also going to draw a visual. This can be a picture, a symbol, an image of any sort, even one that you print off the internet perhaps, to help you to remember the definition of the word. Here is the symbol that I drew to remind me of the definition of excerpt. I drew a book, and I have arrows that are kind of, or brackets that are taking a portion of the words out. On the back of your card, you should include the definition, the root, and an explanation of the image. So in my sample, I show you that the definition is a passage selected from a book, piece of music, a play, etc. The root is X, which means from or out of. And then my explanation of the image does not necessarily need to use the word in context. It just needs to help remind me why I drew what I did. So for my explanation, I said that I drew a book with an arrow pointing to a selection of that text that could be taken out, which is basically what an excerpt is. You do not have to draw the same image that I drew for this. You might have another visual that you think will help you remember the definition of the word. So go ahead and draw whatever you want. Now remember, at any point during this video, you can pause it so that you can take more time on your visuals. The more detailed you are, hopefully the better you'll remember the definitions of the words. We're going to move on to our second word. This word also uses the root X, and the word is exhilarate. Exhilarate is a verb, and it means to cheer, to stimulate, or to enliven. Used in a sentence, I was exhilarated when the Bears finally scored a touchdown. Let's actually hope that happens. Don't forget to add this word, exhilarate, to one of your vocab visual cards. Remember, you're writing the definition and drawing a symbol or picture on the front of the card, and on the back, you're including the definition, the root, X, which means from or out of, and an explanation of why you drew the image that you did. The next word that we're learning is exonerate. Exonerate is a verb, and it means to free from blame or to relieve of a task. For example, after the investigation, Johnny was exonerated and was no longer accused of cheating. Don't forget to make a vocab visual card for exonerate. Another example of this word used in a sentence: when new evidence exonerated the accused forger, the bank president reinstated him at a higher salary. You could also say that your parents exonerated you from mowing the lawn, and that's the second definition, to relieve of a task. The next word is also going to use the root X. It's the last one that uses X. The word is exorbitant. Exorbitant is an adjective, which means it's a describing word, and it means excessive. Steve used an exorbitant amount of hair gel in the morning. Don't forget to include this on one of your vocab visuals. The rhinoceros is in danger of becoming extinct because of the exorbitant price poachers receive for the rhinoceros's horns, is the example from your book. We're now going to be moving on to the second root in this lesson. Again, at any point, pause the video so you can take more time on those visuals. The next root is pono, which means to place or to put. Please make sure you include this root on your root card. This is still lesson 3, and again, it means to place or to put. We have 6 words that are going to use this root. The first one is compound. Compound is one of those words that can be used in many different ways. It can be used as a verb, adjective, or noun. Now, you only really have to write down one of these definitions, but make sure that you know that it can be used in many different formats. A compound can mean the action of mixing together or combining 2 or more parts or elements. It can also describe something that has 2 or more parts or elements. And finally, it can be a combination of elements, parts, or substances. Used in a sentence, it might sound like this: not doing your homework will only compound your inability to pass the test. A lot of times this word will be used in science. For example, steel is a compound of iron, carbon, and other substances such as copper. The next word that uses pono as its root is exposition. Exposition is a noun, hopefully one that you've heard in language arts class before. A lot of times we'll use the word exposition in LA to talk about the beginning of a story. However, the definition from your workbook is a little bit different. Although it is still a noun, it means a precise statement or explanation, or a public exhibit or show. So a fair sometimes is called an expo, which is the shortened version of exposition. So if you've ever been to like the boat expo downtown Chicago or the car expo, it's talking about a public exhibit or show, an exposition. For science, you had to write an exposition on how the enigma worked. That would be a precise statement or explanation. Again, don't forget to make a vocab visual card for exposition. Moving on to our next word, expound. Expound is a verb, and it means to set forth an explanation or view of something in detail. Expound and exposition have some similarities in their definition, so make sure you know that exposition is a noun and expound is a verb. For example, please expound on why you were so late for class. In other words, please give an explanation for why you were so late. The travelers expounded on the animals they saw on their safari. Kind of just means to elaborate, really. The next word that we're going to learn is impose. Impose is a verb, and it means to set up or to force something on oneself or on others. It can also mean to take unfair advantage of someone. We told Sally she could stay over, but she said she didn't want to impose. She didn't want to force herself on us. Again, make sure you add this to your vocab visual card. We have 2 more words we're going to learn. The second to last word is imposter. An imposter is a noun. It's one who deceives by using a false identity. For example, the girls shrieked with delight until they discovered that this Justin Bieber was an imposter, meaning someone who was pretending to be him, not really him. The last word that we're going to learn for lesson 3, proponent. Proponent is a noun. It's a person who argues in support of something. Proponents of a minimum wage increase feel that our workers are not being compensated fairly. Proponents of recycling newsprint, glass, and aluminum have found citizens more willing to cooperate than they expected. The opposite of a proponent is an opponent. So when you play in a sports match, for example, you have an opponent, someone who is opposing you or going against you. Well, a proponent is someone who argues for you or in support of you. These are all of the words that we're learning for lesson 3. Again, this quiz coming up is going to be a compilation of lesson 1, 2, and 3. So you need to know all of the words and roots from all 3 of those lessons. And at this point, you should have the 2 new roots from lesson 3 written on your root card. And you should have 10 vocab visual cards completed for each of the 10 words. Thanks for listening.